Welcome to the Run for God Run Club, where you will find God in a runner's space.
Welcome to the Run for God Run Club. This is your one stop each week to be motivated and inspired to get off the couch and onto the running trail, where you can in turn inspire others to do the same. Let's learn, laugh, and leap into running together, giving God the glory for what we were able to do in His name. Amen. I'm your running host, Dean Thompson, back by popular demand is Run for God founder Mitchell Hollis.
Thanks for having me, Dean.
Well, you were on vacation a couple of weeks ago.
I was.
We kind of did a short little podcast in between about the weekend of racing and all. How did that vacation go?
It went good. We actually had it just so happened the weekend we were down there, we were at my in-laws, and there was a 5K down there. And so I thought, we'll go run the 5K. And, of course, Lane ran it and Landon ran it. But my son Landon, he's my youngest. He's the woodworker, hunter, doesn't really care for running, hasn't ran in almost 2 years. And so I talked Landon into running with us. And I thought, I've kind of gotten back into running. I may have to pull Landon along. Well, we're running about halfway through. Now, remember, Landon hasn't run in probably 2 years of any consistency. And he said, how far have we been? I said, about 1.5 miles. And I'm thinking, he's about to start dragging. No. He says, okay. And he just pulls away from me and just takes off and runs a 25-minute 5K. And I'm like, oh, to be young again.
Yeah.
And so that was it was cool. It was a nice weekend down there. We were in the panhandle of Florida, and it was nice.
Yeah, I tried to ask Landon. I said, so does this mean you're going to run cross-country now? And he looked at me like, no.
And then this past weekend he ran 23-something. So we're gonna have to work on him.
I'll tell you
to get him in there, because he's good at it.
He is.
Landon just doesn't like anything structured.
Yeah.
He loves to fish, but he doesn't really want to be on the fishing team.
Yeah.
He likes to run every now and then. He just don't want to be told when to run. So I think we need to work on him.
It was interesting. We had Darren Lewis here a couple of weeks ago. I've had a lot of comments about that particular podcast.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Darren, we had our 5K in Dalton this past weekend, where a lot of the Run Club members were there. I was more impressed by Darren Lewis than anybody I saw finish. Darren ran a 20:44 this past weekend.
Yes, he did.
And we said that course for that time bracket was probably 45 seconds slow, and Darren's had a goal out there of breaking 20. I think if that would have been on the road, he would have broke 20, which we won't tell Darren's age. Did Darren tell his age?
I don't remember. But
we won't tell it on here.
He's older than me.
He's older than you, so he's one of the old guys in my mind. But to run that fast, that's incredible.
Yeah.
That it really is.
Yeah.
And to see he's getting faster and faster the older he gets.
It was good to see.
Kudos to Darren.
He seemed to be genuinely surprised by it, too. Afterwards, he was like, I don't know where that came from.
He did, because he even said in the podcast that since he started the Marathon Challenge that he's kind of put the goal of breaking 20 on the shelf, and he needs to find a 5K in the next few weeks and hit that goal, because I think he can.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you read something and you can just feel the excitement in it. And this week we're going to share another very short story, but it paints a really full picture. And then let me ask you this question. How long do you think the longest burning light bulb in the United States has been burning? Would you think 10 years maybe? You think there's been a light bulb that's burned 10 years? Maybe 20 years? Well, this week's Dean's Thoughts will tell you exactly how long that is. So, this week's episode is brought to us by another sponsor, another Run for God sponsor. These sponsors are fantastic. I think you have used these folks, right?
I have,
personally,
for both of my boys.
Right.
Smile Doctors Orthodontics is one of our sponsors, and to me, they're the best choice for braces around. It's a fun, playful environment that takes all the stress out of braces. The workers there are very caring, and they work towards each patient's specific needs until they're complete. Your consultation is free, and they will examine exactly what needs to be done for you personally. So if you're interested in getting braces or you've got kids around, the cool thing about Smile Doctors, they're in a lot of different places. So find your local Smile Doctors now and get your free consultation. We really, and if you're out there and you own a business and you're interested in this, shoot us an email, reach out to us, because without these sponsors, we just can't do what we do. So thank you to Smile Doctors.
Yeah, amen. And here is a Facebook post from, actually, this has now been a little while back, but it's very instructive, interesting. It's actually two Facebook posts, and I want to compare and contrast the two. So the first one is from Jim Stimson. It's from April the 3rd at 7:03 p.m., and he said, "What a perfect morning for my long run. Temp was 71 degrees at the start. Had a really good run. Thank you, Lord." And then he posted a photo with this one that showed it was 97 degrees in Lake Havasu. So he was illustrating just how hot it was. It was okay, it was nice, and then it was really, really, really hot. And then on basically around the same time,
2 days before,
Emily Coleman Chandler posted this: 24 degrees, feels like 18. But a busy day means the workout must be done before sunrise.
Sounds like weather in the South.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. We can have both of those weathers almost in the same week sometimes around here.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But it just illustrates a few things, which I thought were kind of cool. First, to me, it illustrates the fact we live in a really interesting country.
Yeah.
Where we can have those kinds of extremes close together in the same country. But it also illustrates and underscores just what different backgrounds all of the folks in Run Club come from. And that's weather is one thing, but there's so many other things.
Sure.
We are so diverse as a group, and I just think that's really cool to see that. We hear a lot of talk about diversity these days. That's true diversity. These people, we're all different. We come from different backgrounds, but we all have one thing in common, and it's running, and we all love it.
I talked about that Saturday night. Of course, we had a dinner for all the Run Club members who came to Dalton this past weekend, and that really stuck out to me. Saturday night, I was telling the group, we had about almost 200 people for dinner. That was pretty cool to see. But I said, I feel like this is a picture of heaven, this room tonight. I said we've got different shapes, sizes, colors, abilities, backgrounds, ethnicities. We've got it all in this one room, but we're all here for one common goal. It's because we all love running and we all love Jesus.
Yeah.
And I said that's just a picture of heaven. I even kind of joked about, we've got so many different denominations here, and during the praise and worship, you could see the charismatic ones in the crowd.
Yeah.
And it was just cool that, some people had their hands down, some people had their hands up, and it was just awesome to watch.
Yeah. Here's I think a cool picture is the thought of the beginning of the race, right?
Sure.
The beginning of a race, you watch, and as that whole group just kind of all heads out in that same direction with the same purpose, maybe different goals, but the same purpose. It's just like our running toward the cross, isn't it? Picture all of those people also doing the same thing, but running toward the cross. That's what we're doing every day.
Yeah, and the fact that some of us get there before others. I say all the time, I don't say it all the time, but I have said that running, it doesn't matter how fast you are. It's the fact that you cross the finish line. And, those that go on before us and finish, Hebrews 12:1 says that they're the cloud of witnesses. They're there cheering us on coming in. And I don't know, that's why I love the sport of running and how it relates to our walk with Christ. And this weekend, man, I know we talked about it in last week's episode, but it was just an awesome weekend to be a part of.
Yeah, it was. Well, we had a trivia question from a couple of weeks ago. And so I want to give the answer to that question because last week we didn't share a trivia question. So let me share that. We don't talk about cross country very much, but it's a great sport, and because you've seen the kids running,
Sure.
and I've seen so many people go to their first cross country race and go, "Wow, that was so much more impressive than I thought it would be." There has only been one American guy and two American women who have ever won the World Cross Country Championships. Who are they? And of course, we got some correct answers, and the male that did it was Craig Virgin. Craig Virgin was a crazy good cross-country runner. I have actually talked with Craig Virgin on the phone a few times. Really, really interesting guy. He has a real passion for running and runners. But Craig's a good guy. The United States has never won the team title on the men's side. But they've been second. They were second 5 times in the 80s. And then in 2013, they hadn't sniffed the podium in years. And in 2013, they had this team that just ran this incredible race and finished second, runner-up. It baffled everybody.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool. The Kenyans and the Ethiopians had won it every year. Listen to this. Kenyans and Ethiopians, one or the other, won it every year from 1981 until 2019. And in 2019, it was the Ugandans. So nobody from outside of Africa has won the World Cross-Country Championships since 1980.
You know, when I read this, it reminded me of, we have some motivational signs at our races, and one of them says, in our eyes, you're all Kenyans.
Yeah.
And, it's amazing how the Kenyans have just always been known for running like they do. And it's impressive just to watch people from that area and how graceful and effortless they make it look.
Yeah, but they work really crazy hard too.
They do.
But the interesting thing about cross country is cross country probably is bigger in Europe. In Europe, cross country is huge. They have, like, a town will have a cross country team and they'll compete against other towns. They have these club cross country teams in Europe, and so it's huge in Europe.
So they almost have like leagues.
They really
do. We have football and basketball and baseball leagues.
Yep.
They have cross-country leagues.
Yep.
Wow.
Sort of like, cool. You go out and you might see a group playing soccer.
Right.
And that's two teams that just kind of got together to play. We have that. They have that. We don't have that in the United States.
I wonder why.
I don't know, but it's really cool.
Why don't you just start a cross-country league? The American Cross Country, the ACCL, American Cross Country League.
I like it. Well, I run in a cross country race every year that is based on clubs.
Right.
The Club Cross Country Championships in December. So that's and that's huge. It is huge. I remember one time there being 600 runners.
But y'all really don't train together, though. I mean, you all get together and you go to that event. But you're saying they actually train together over there and strategize, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. On the women's side, Julie Brown was the first one to win the World Cross Country Championships, and this was the World Cross Country Championships have only been around since 1973. She won it in 1975, just a couple of years after the race began. But then Lynn Jennings comes along in 1990. Lynn Jennings was a phenomenal runner who ran and successfully from events from 1,500 meters to a marathon. That's a pretty wide range of events to be good at. And, of course, along the way, she won 3 World Cross Country Championships in 90, 91, and 92. She won 9 American Cross Country Championships. And the U.S. women won 6 of the first 15 years of the Cross Country Championships, and only finished off the podium 3 times during those 15 years. So the women came out really, really strong when they first started. Now that we're to that point now where it's mostly the African countries that dominate on the women's side, just like they do the men. But the last time the women were on the podium was 2011 when they were third. The women ran 10K. This last race was in 2019, and women ran 10K, and the men ran 10K. It was the first time since the cross country championship started that the men and women ran the same distance. When the World Cross Country Championships first started, I think the men ran around 12K and the women ran 5K. And over the years, the men have run 10 to 12K almost every year, but the women have steadily over that year, every few years, they increase the distance.
So you coach college cross country. Why is it you see the differences, even like the race you're talking about, they change different distances every now and then. And even like in college, the guys typically run 8K, but some races they'll run 5K or 10K. What dictates the distances at particular meets at the collegiate level and even at this level? Is it some kind of what dictates that? That's
a good question. Most of the time when you see men running a 5K, it's early in the season. It's probably August. It's really, really hot outside, and so they're running shorter races to take less of a toll on their body. It's early. They're just trying to gauge fitness. Most of their races will be 8K throughout the year, but then the 10K, and this is only for NCAA. It doesn't work this way. I coach in NAIA. It's 8K all year. For NCAA, all three divisions, 1, 2, and 3, the championship races are 10K. So for whatever reason, they run 8K almost all year, and then they run 10K in the championship. Women, same way. They run 5K most of the year. They'll run a few 6K races during the year, but then their championship races are 6K. And we, again, in NAIA, we're 5K.
Yeah.
So, and this is different in this country than anywhere else. In our country, we have standard distances that we run. If you go and you look at the World Cross Country Championships, it's almost never a 10K or a 12K. It's usually an odd distance.
Whatever the course dictates.
Yeah, it's 12,186 meters or something like that, because it's just whatever the course is, because that's what cross country is about. Cross country is not about time. But in this country, we can't do anything that's not about time. And so we don't like different distances. We want to gauge how we are based on our time. And the truth is it's the racing.
We were talking on the way up here about something. I don't remember I do remember what we were talking about. We won't talk about it, but you made a comment that really stuck out to me. You said, "I'm not impressed when you beat somebody's time. I'm impressed when you beat somebody."
Yeah.
And that's really the heart of cross country.
It is.
And track, really.
Right.
It's that shoulder to shoulder racing. And
we've seen
that's what's so fun to watch.
Joshua Cheptegei, he set several world records. Well, he did it through completely even pacing, and all that's great. I am not denigrating that at all. It's fantastic. It's cool. But how many gold medals does he have? Because that's what really matters.
Right.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's cool to have a world record. I'd say that having an Olympic gold medal, better than having a world record. In my estimation, it would be.
Yeah. So. Which is harder? Is it harder to learn to even pace and break times, or is it harder to learn to adjust to the field and beat people? And the latter,
no question about that.
Sure.
Yeah. The World Cross Country Championships were contested every year for a long time, but then in 2011 they made the decision to do it every other year. So I love cross country. I love the way they do it in Europe, where they'll lay out the European Championships. You can find it online. You can Google it and find it online. A lot of their championships will be in a stadium. And they'll have this course that's several laps, and it'll wind its way around the stadium where they bring in dirt and stuff, and they have these hay bales that they'll jump over. Sometimes it's walls or other things that they jump over, and it's a cool sport.
Yeah.
It's a really cool sport.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so we are moving on. Right?
Stepping up.
Yep.
Stepping up to the next step.
That's right. On to the next phase, couch to marathon.
So we're on to the 10K now. It's funny how we're getting a lot of the same questions and comments as we got at the beginning of the 5K.
Yeah.
The doubt.
Yeah.
The questions. Can I really do this? If you completed the 5K challenge, you're going to complete the 10K challenge. So long as you keep focused, you don't look ahead. Looking ahead will just scare you. Don't do that. Stay focused and stay right here where we're at today. Because honestly, if I looked ahead, I would be scared too. Just don't do that. I'm right here with you. If you're listening to this and you kind of struggled your way through the 5K, I'm right there with you. I am there with you. I made the mistake a few days ago of looking ahead some, and I thought, man, this is going to be tough. I don't need to do that. So you can do it. You will do it if you keep focused.
I've had some people ask, can I start the 5K challenge anytime?
Absolutely.
And so we have those videos online. If you're a part of Run Club, you can start the 5K challenge any day you want to.
Right.
June 1st? Yes. June 4th? Yes. July 18th? Yes. Whatever day.
That's the beauty of what we're doing in Run Club. We're creating all these programs, and we're doing it live. We're doing it as we go, but it's the beauty of archiving. So you can now go to training in the Run Club. You can go to the training tab, pull down, click on the 5K challenge, and you've got the 12 weeks worth of videos. You got all the documentation. You can order the materials, and you can start that and do that anytime you want. So maybe you've been through the 5K challenge already, and you're moving on with us to the 10K, but you see the value of what it did in your life, and you want to become an instructor. You know, we're going to talk about that a lot in the coming weeks and months. Is, you know, take this and spread it in your community. Become an instructor. So you can pull these videos up. You can have a small group at your house, at your church, at a park, wherever you want. You can all get together, and you can, no longer do you have to get up and teach. Well, while we still encourage that, we want to push you out of your comfort zone to teach, but now you can pop in a video. You can pull up the videos that are online and basically just facilitate at this point. And we say it all the time. It doesn't matter if you're taking the class or if you're teaching the class, it will change your life. In fact, we say that many times as an instructor, you're going to get more out of it than your students ever will. And we see it over and over. And now we have the tools to replicate that consistently anytime somebody wants to do it.
Amen. That is crazy awesome. And I think Jesus, you know, in Matthew, we know that Jesus said, go out and make disciples.
Sure.
Well, you know, there's only so much room, that especially back in that day when they were writing all this stuff down. It was a big deal to write down a lot of words. And I'm pretty sure that Jesus said, go out and make runners too. But Matthew just didn't record it because it was just extra work.
You may be stretching just a little bit there.
All right, maybe that's too much. But it's
an awesome thing to do because you can make disciples in the process.
That's right. Amen. Well, as always, we are proud to be sponsored by the world's greatest digital music platform, J Radio.
As a mom, I want to make sure we choose a cereal that's not entirely derived from sugar. Their car seats have to be nationally CPS certified, and their first car has to have every possible safety feature known to man. I just want to do my best to make sure that they're safe. One thing I don't have to worry about is the content they hear on J Radio. Not only do they love the music, but I know it's only going to be a positive message that I would approve of. Now, if I could just figure out how to get my youngest from sticking everything up his nose.
Sign up at jradio.com and download the new J Radio app in your app store.
All right, we're back, and you can send questions, messages, any way that you want to communicate with Mitchell or I. You can send to Dean at runforgod.com. If you don't know about us, go to runforgod.com or runforgodrunclub.com and learn more about us. You may just be listening to this podcast because you were just searching for something to listen to, and you just happened up on it, and you're like, what is this Run Club thing? Well, go to runforgodrunclub.com, learn more about what we're about, because I think you'll find that joining Run Club will make your running, it'll just take it to the next level. And also, if you're a Run Club member and you share your story, we're going to share somebody's story. If you share your story with us, you go right to the head of the line, and we make sure that we get your story. We're going to share it right here on this very podcast. And some of these stories are incredible. They're great. And so we want to hear your story. So you can submit that, once again, at either one of those websites, runforgod.com or runforgodrunclub.com. Maybe you want to share your story live. We've had that a few times. Darren was here. 2 weeks ago, Darren was here, and he shared his story. It was great. It was great fun, and we would love to have you here doing that.
I don't mind taking a back seat anytime because Darren, God, he just did an awesome job. And
boy, you can hear his heart, can't you?
You can. Hey, I want to share a story with you. This is a story I heard last night. This was not a submitted Run for God story. It's just an awesome story that I heard. I love stories, and this is a good friend of mine, and this gentleman is Israeli, and he grew up in Israel. He's Jewish, and he was telling me a story. I had heard bits and pieces of this story before, but he told the story last night. We were having dinner with his family and my family, and this gentleman grew up in Israel, and there was a war back in 1973. It was called the Yom Kippur war. Am I saying that right? Yom Kippur. It's like it is the biggest Jewish holiday. It's kind of like our Christmas. And so in 1973, Egypt and Syria invaded Israel on the equivalent of our Christmas Day. So you can kind of see the setting. They were trying to take advantage and siege on one of the big holidays. And my friend was actually training to be in the military, but wasn't fully in the military yet, something like that. He didn't get real detailed right there. But basically, once the invasion happened, he and some of his team went and basically stole a tank and went into battle.
Wow.
And they went into battle, and the Egyptians and the Syrians were invading, and they were just, it was basically hand-to-hand, tank-to-tank combat, which you don't really see much nowadays. A lot of it's done by aircraft and surface-to-air and things like that. But anyway, they went into battle, and his commander, he was in the belly of the tank. He was a gunner, and his commander was above him. I don't really know how tanks work, but long story short, they got hit by a missile, and it killed everyone in the tank except for my friend, and he was in the belly of the tank, and he was kind of trapped. And basically, where the gun turret raises and lowers, there was just a small hole that he could get out. And he said it would be basically the same as a mouse getting through a small crack. You look at the mouse and you wonder, how did they get through that? And he said it's kind of the way it was for him. He was able to crawl through this hole. His clothing was basically melted to him. I mean, the heat was so intense. And he got out, and he was in the sand, and he realized his legs weren't working. There was a lot of damage and a lot of injury to him, and he was crawling, and another tank pulled up, and a gentleman reached over and basically grabbed him by the collar, pulled him into the tank, and they took off. And hours later, he don't really remember a lot of the details about what happened right there, but he woke up in a hospital, and they were working on him, and he told the nurse, he said, "I want to know who saved my life." And he said, all I knew is that it was a commander or a general. I'm not really sure the term he said, but a higher ranking officer. And he said, that's all I know. And the lady that was tending to him in the hospital wrote 3 names down on his medical chart. And she said, it may be one of these people. These are the only ones that I know of that were close by. And she wrote 3 names down. And so days later, he was released from the hospital. He had some pretty substantial injuries. But at that time in the war, it was a pretty devastating war, and a lot of people died. And he realized that he didn't want to reach out to these 3 people because he didn't know if they would be alive. He just didn't want to have that conversation of calling a family, looking for somebody for them to say they didn't make it. So he never reached out to these people. This is back in 1973. So fast forward almost 30 years later, and my friend is a businessman, and he was doing business in Israel, and he had hired an attorney several years prior, and this was kind of like his personal attorney. And he, like I said, he was a businessman in Israel, and he was going for a doctor's visit one day. And evidently in Israel, medical documents aren't like they are here. Most of your medical documents are stored at your physician's office. Well, in Israel, you have your medical documents. You have your medical file, and when you go to the doctor, you take your file with you. At least that's the way it was in the late 90s when the point where we're at in this story. And so he went to the doctor, and he was sitting out in the waiting room waiting on the doctor, just like you do here. And he was just kind of thumbing through his medical files. And he came across this handwritten list of 3 names from decades before when he was injured in the war. And he saw these names, and he stood up, and he walked out of the doctor's office. And he went home, and he got on the phone, and he called his attorney. And the secretary answered the phone, and he said, I need to speak to whatever the gentleman's name is. And the lady said, he's in a meeting. And my friend said, get him out of the meeting. And she said, well, sir, he's in a meeting. And he said, get him out of the meeting. I need to talk to him. And so his friend, his attorney, got on the phone and said, what's going on? What's so urgent here? And he said, what were you doing October such and such, 1973? And he said there was just silence. His attorney was the guy that pulled him out of the tank.
Wow.
And he never knew it until he was sitting in the doctor's office and he saw those 3 names, and he realized that name is my attorney now. And it's just insane. And they're still great friends today. They actually do some business together today. My friend lives in America now. But I just thought that was the most incredible story. And to hear the emotion my friend is not an emotional guy at all. You've heard me talk about him.
Yeah.
But to hear the emotion behind that story, and it was just one of the most incredible stories I'd ever heard, how sometimes God will put people back together after decades. And he put them back together years before, and they didn't even know it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just thought I would share that story because, it gave me cold chills last night.
And it is me now, because you purposefully didn't tell me this story before we got here so that I could hear it for the first time.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
It was.
You know what I think about when I hear the story is most people who meet somebody in those circumstances, when you meet that person maybe that saved your life a long time ago, it's crazy. It's a crazy, neat thing to do,
yeah.
right? But he knew who this guy was.
Right.
He wasn't just meeting him to, for this guy to go, yeah, I saved your life. It was, he already knew who he was.
But didn't know who he was.
Yeah, and the guy had no reason to, to put on any airs or anything like that. He knew who the guy was. That's fascinating.
It is. It's crazy.
Awesome. Wow.
It's crazy. So anyway, that's
what a great story.
My short story for today.
My goodness. Well, have you ever changed a bunch of things all at once? I remember 1988 for me. I graduated from college. I got a real job. I got married and bought a house, all within a few months of each other.
That's a lot of change.
That's a lot of change. All of those things are considered major life events.
Sure.
And I did all of those things in a few months.
But that's kind of the way you roll anyway.
Yeah, it is. It is. A bunch of stuff all at once and then relax for a little bit. Anyway, this story is it's about changing 2 pretty big things all about the same time. And it's a story. It's called New to Christ and Never Ran Ever. I don't know why I love that title. It's not grammatically correct. I just love the title, New to Christ and Never Ran Ever. And it's from Shannon Allister from El Cajon, California. And it's very short.
Is that how you say that?
El Cajon? Yep.
I would have said El Cajun. But I'm from the South.
Yeah. I did take some Spanish, This is how it goes. Where to start? I am new to Christ. I had never run before. I fell in love with the Lord in 2012 after my daughter asked me to go to church. I had never been. We went. Boom. Never left. And fell in love. Found a good community and family in our local home church. Running. What? Me? Run? Well, I'll try. I had been an avid walker for many years and really enjoyed it. Always felt my time walking was my own personal time with the Lord. One day, I set out for a run. It has been a fun journey ever since. I'm still slow and learning a lot, but I find my miles are full of peace, joy, and Him.
This sounds like my kind of lady. Short and to the point.
Yeah.
My wife says that's how my text messages are.
Yeah.
I could expand and describe a little bit more, but she's just to the point and
the information you need. And
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just love the way she puts a lot of that stuff. The first scripture passage is one that we're all familiar with. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. Of course, that comes from Jeremiah 29:11. And that was a letter from Jeremiah, right? That's where this verse comes from. A lot of times we think about verses from the Bible just being something somebody wrote down, but this was an actual letter that he wrote.
Sure.
Chapter 29, verse 1 says this, Now these are the words of the letter that Jeremiah the prophet sent to Jerusalem to the remainder of the elders who were carried away captive, to the priests, the prophets, and the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had carried away captive from Jerusalem to Babylon. They would be there for 70 years. They were taken away, and they would be there for 70 years, and Jeremiah is pleading with them in this letter to understand who they are. And this is what Jeremiah says to them before verse 11. He says, Build houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat their fruit, take wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husbands, so that they may bear sons and daughters, that you may increase there and not diminish. And seek the peace of the city where I have caused you to be carried away captive, and pray to the Lord, for in its peace you will have peace. For in its peace you will have peace. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, do not let your prophets and your diviners who are in your midst deceive you, nor listen to your dreams which you cause to be dreamed. For they prophesy falsely to you, my name I have not sent them, says the Lord.
How many times are we just like the children of Israel?
Every day.
Yeah, the whole first part of the book of Jeremiah is Jeremiah saying,
Whoa!
Listen, Israel, you're about to go off a cliff here, and you wonder what the people in Israel thought when the Babylonians came and just wiped them out and captured them, and were they saying like everything was so good, but Jeremiah's saying no, it wasn't. They've been headed our way. This has been coming. God was coming for judgment, but you didn't listen. Yep. And what's awesome about this is even during captivity, God was there to comfort. I grew up in the South. I grew up with old-fashioned whoopings. My dad used to whoop me, but it never came as a surprise. I thought it came as a surprise, but so many times my dad was saying, Mitchell, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. And then here come the whooping, and I was like, whoa, what happened? But my dad would always come to me afterwards and say, I warned you. I love you, but I warned you. And it kind of reminds me of an old-fashioned whooping here. God was saying, don't do this. He was sending people out. Yep. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And, man, I can just relate to this story so much because I'm here so much.
Yeah, and Jeremiah is clearly, that's what he's doing. He's telling them that exactly and it's obvious to him because God's given him that word.
Right.
And he's telling them, okay, you've messed up at this point, but let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's go in the right direction. We got ourselves into this mess, but let's keep going in the right direction because God has a plan. And that's where verse 11 comes from, is he's talking about God still has a plan. No matter what, he's still got a plan. And then the next scripture passage is John 10:10. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and they may have it more abundantly. Those are Jesus's words. Mm-hmm. Once again, I think when we look at verses of Scripture, we have to put them in context and realize Jesus said that. And do we really grasp the idea of this whole idea of having life and having it more abundantly? That's what God is trying to tell us. You dovetail that with Jeremiah, and he's telling us, do what I'm asking you to do. Right. Live the way I'm asking you to live. I have a plan for you, and it's awesome, but
you got to listen.
You got to listen.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to put our relationship with God in the context of our relationship with our earthly fathers or our relationship with our earthly sons. You know, God wants us to have a good life, just like I want my sons to have a good life. But there must be discipline. We understand this as parents, but so many times we don't see the connection when it comes to God. And, you know, just like we as fathers should be, God's anger is not aroused quickly. Many times he has grace, he has forgiveness, but we tend to do things over and over and push the boundaries, just like back then. Jeremiah was warning and prophesying for a long time before the Babylonians sieged them.
Yeah.
But we see it took all the way to chapter 21 before Jerusalem's doom was ultimately sealed.
Yeah.
And we many times we look at things that happen in our life that God allowed to happen, and we're like, what happened? But it's like we just don't get it sometimes.
Yep. It was not a surprise. Yep. I think about division, and there's a little bit further down after the scripture. It says there was a division again among the Jews because of these sayings, and many of them said, he has a demon and is mad. Why do you listen to him? And another said, these are not the words of one who has a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? And so we have these factions. You know, one group who is saying one thing, and one group is saying, does that sound familiar today? I mean, we can't get along today because we can't even talk without looking at the other person and going, you're just wrong. Right. You don't even listen. And they may be wrong. They may be wrong. But if you're shutting it down and you're not even listening, it's not helping.
But also God's word's clear. We will be persecuted for speaking the words of Jesus. So your notes say it's difficult to believe that Jesus' words could be so divisive, but that's exactly what he said they would be.
That's right.
And we're surprised when they are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know why we're so surprised, because we see it. The Bible gives us all this historical reference of division, and yet when we see it today, we're surprised by it. And the same thing that's causing division today is what was causing division back then.
And it'll be the same thing that causes division 50 years from now.
Yep. It's been here all along.
Sure.
Third passage, Romans 12:12. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, in honor giving preference to one another, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, distributing to the needs of the saints, given to hospitality.
You know, when I read this morning, I guess the Lord just really parked me here in Romans 12. You know, the second sentence says, abhor what is evil. Well, I looked up the word abhor, and it means to regard with detest and hatred. And, you know, this is a tough concept these days. You know, I can kind of relate to this more than some, maybe because of my background with my dad. You know, my dad was a raging alcoholic when I was young, and what he was doing was living in sin. And I hated that. I hated that. If you've listened to this podcast very long, you've heard his story. And if you haven't, go back and listen to it a few episodes back. But I hated my dad's sin. But I loved my dad. And I think this is a concept in our society that's gotten so twisted. And it's the concept that to love somebody means that you love their sin, or to hate somebody's sin means that you hate the person. And that's just not true, and it's just not scriptural. You know, I hated his lifestyle, but I loved him. You can hate the sin. In fact, it says, abhor what is evil. Sin is evil. You can hate the sin and love the sinner. How? Just like I did with my dad. You know, I refused to be part of that lifestyle that he was living. Mm-hmm. But when he decided to lay that lifestyle down, I was the first person he saw when he turned around.
That's right.
And that's exactly how God is with us.
That's right.
I mean, it's exactly how God is. You know, I can hate abortion, but I can love the person who had an abortion.
Amen.
I can hate homosexuality, but I can love the person involved in it. I can hate alcoholism, but I loved my dad. You know, H.R. Poe can hate the sin of idolatry, but I thank God that he loved me enough to point that sin out in my life. You know, you can hate a person's sin and you can love them to Christ all at the same time.
Yeah.
But our world is really trying to distort that, and that's where we as Christians have got to stand up here. Yeah. Just like Jeremiah, he was standing up saying, whoa, what you're doing is wrong. You know, if you really go back and you look, what chapter was it? I think chapter 19 or chapter 20. I don't even have it right here, but that's when God sealed Israel's fate. You know, judgment was coming. But what was going on just before that? The Israelites had stooped so low as they were sacrificing kids. Wow. And God said, I've had it. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. Right. You kind of wonder where we as a society are headed. I mean, sacrificing kids, sound familiar? Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different nowadays, but it's the same. Yeah. And, you know, it just really rung my bell this morning going through Jeremiah, and it's so awesome how God opens our eyes each time we look at a chapter or open the Bible. It speaks to us differently. And this is how it spoke to me this morning, that we need to wake up.
And in that time, when all of this was going on and they were sacrificing those children, they were justifying that.
Sure.
And that's what we do today, is we take things that in the deepest depths of our heart we know are sins, and we justify them some way. And, you know, God is things are black and white.
They were sacrificing kids on the altar of Baal.
Yeah.
That was a different God. That was an idol. We have different gods today. Yeah. We sacrifice our biblical principles on the altar of inclusion, or on the altar of whatever. Pick a hot button topic nowadays, and we need more and more Jeremiahs today.
Yeah, this verse we're talking about here, it talks about rejoicing in hope, being patient in tribulation, and continuing in prayer. Mm-hmm. But the whole thing starts off with, let love be without hypocrisy. Right. And that's where we are today, is on whatever side of the issue. It's on both sides of every issue. You have people saying one thing and acting in a different way. Right. And we should neither condemn the person, condemning the sin, fine, that's what Jeremiah was doing, but never condemn the person, because we've seen it over and over again. We've seen God redeem people who, in their estimation, were not redeemable.
The Bible's full of it. And you and I were talking on the way up here. This is where many times as Christians we fail, because, and I said, I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it. We condemn we throw the baby out with the bathwater. We condemn the sin, and we just write the person off, and we condemn the person as well. And that is also a sin.
Yep.
We're to love the person and try to love them to Christ. But so many times we get caught up in our ideology or whatever, and we cast judgment, and that's a dangerous thing for us.
Yeah.
Because the same judgment that we cast, we're going to be shown as well. And we've got to learn to separate those two, and we have to.
Yep. Yeah, I remember a guy that I have an association with through college athletics, who I remember him talking about the George Floyd thing. I don't want to get into the politics of the George Floyd thing, obviously, but I remember seeing the pain in his eyes as he described what was going on there. And that's the kind of love that we have to have for one another. Is he didn't know who he was, but he saw what happened to the guy, and he doesn't excuse some of the things that he did, but he beforehand, that maybe even led up to that. But the idea on watching human life go away, regardless of what caused it to go away, it's just heartbreaking. And that's where we need to get to, is when we see people, I hear people argue all the time in this case, well, he did this. He's a human being, and we should be looking at everybody we meet that way. I don't care if they spit in your face. Now, you shouldn't ask for that to happen again, but the Bible's really clear that even that person who did that, you're to love that person. And that's hard. That is hard. Question number 1. Why? Why run? What's the plan?
I ask that sometimes too.
I was a little unsure what Shannon meant here, but I can answer the why run question at least. We were made to be active. I feel like in my case, for example, that's what God made me for. I honestly believe, and just through the things that God has revealed to me, that's why He made me to be a runner, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And then, from a personal standpoint, I see that. But then we find there are reasons in the Bible to run as well. The whole body is a temple thing. The whole idea that we should be doing some form of exercise. It doesn't say we should run.
Sure.
But we already mentioned running is the only sport mentioned in the Bible.
Running and wrestling.
That's right. So,
and wasn't it funny that Charlie's message Sunday was about wrestling?
Yeah. Isn't that great? But I like the next words of what she says. What's the plan? And I know you like those words. So
I'm a planner for sure.
We sure don't like it when there's no plan.
Nope.
What do we say? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah.
There's no doubt of the efficacy of that statement. That is absolutely true.
I do love some spontaneity. It just needs to be planned out.
Planned spontaneity. Yeah. So a little bit of spontaneity in running is pretty fun. New routes.
Yeah.
I was running just the other day in our downtown area, which has just been transformed over the past 10 years.
Yeah,
in Cohutta.
Yeah.
It's been great.
You're already getting to be a huge metropolitan.
I'm telling you, it won't be long.
Got a barbecue place and what was it just opened?
An ice cream place. Yeah. Well, we're probably going to need a new zip code soon. That's what I'm thinking.
Y'all are getting too big.
But
there's no red light in Cohutta, right?
That's right.
There's a stop sign.
There is a stop sign. But there's a storefront that was a store years ago that is being renovated, along with these other buildings that were renovated into what they are. And I was running the other day, and I just kind of took a detour and stopped. The building was open. It was clearly okay to walk around, and I just walked around in there. It was kind of a neat break during my run. And I think it's fun to do stuff like that. To every once in a while, I'm supposed to be out on an 8-mile run, but I'm going to take a detour.
Sure.
I'm going to talk to this person. I don't know how many times I've talked to somebody. Red Clay State Park is, a little over 3 miles away from my house. When I go for a run, I run by Red Clay State Park all the time. I can't even count the number of times where I've run into somebody who's on a bike or somebody. There's a guy named Bob who's a cyclist, rides all the time. And I run into Bob. Me and Bob are just good friends. It's just because I took the time in the middle of a run to just talk to Bob.
Yeah.
And every time I see him, it's like, hey, there's Bob. It lifts me up. I feel good about running. You know? So, yeah. All right. Question number 2. I know you will be tired, tried, and challenged. Do not give up. So
I didn't find the question in there.
I didn't either, but we could talk about that all day, couldn't we?
Sure.
This whole idea of don't give up. That's what Jeremiah was doing, right? He was not giving up. He knew that God had a message that he was supposed to preach, and he continued to preach it even when nobody was listening.
And that's the hardest place to be. The hardest place to be is when you know you're doing something right, but nobody else sees it. And even further than that, you're catching flack or you're being persecuted because of it. That's a really tough place to be, but I think that's where we shine the most from a heavenly perspective is when we do make the sacrifice and we do the things that we know God's calling us to do, but it's not socially acceptable. It may not be financially acceptable. Keep the list going there. Yeah. But we do it anyway. Yeah. And there is a reward that comes there, not only in heaven, but internally. Yeah. You know that what you're doing is right, and God confirms that in our heart. But it's not easy.
Yeah. No.
It is hard. It is tiring. We do get tried. Yeah.
Well, today's a good example for me. I had the second dose of the coronavirus vaccine yesterday. And I feel like I've been hit by a truck today. I did not want to get in the car and come here and do this. All I wanted to do was sleep.
Yeah. But you're here.
But I'm here, and after I get through, it's going to be like, yeah, I fought through that, and it feels good.
And you're going to go for a 10-mile run this evening, aren't you?
Probably not, but but I may go for 6.
Yeah.
And it'll be fine, and I'm going to live, and it's all going to be good, and hopefully, somebody's listening to this going, I'm tired sometimes too, but I can get up and go do it.
It always feels good to get through those things, whatever it is, whether it's physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. It's always good. It always feels good to get through.
Yep.
It always feels good to get through.
I feel like I've lost if I let tiredness beat me. You know what I mean? If I ever give into it, I feel it's almost like losing a race. I've given in, and it's like in a race. If you're gonna come down to a race, we had a discussion here recently about somebody that we both know very well, who didn't put everything they had into a race,
right.
And I don't know how you do that. You got to put everything you got in there, and I feel like if I don't do that, then I failed. And I feel that way about everything. If I give in to the tiredness, then I failed.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I mentioned Charlie's message this weekend, and the message couldn't be more fitting for the group. I mean, we probably had 150 Run for God Run Club members in my church Sunday morning, which was just awesome. Mm-hmm. And then Charlie's message was about Jacob wrestling with God. And he was talking about blessings. He started a sermon off of blessings and how so many times we give up before we get the blessing, and how Jacob just wouldn't give up. He would not give up. And that's such a metaphor for our lives, for our running life, for our spiritual life, emotion, whatever. Is so many times we give up. God never said this life following him is going to be easy. He said it'd be worth it.
Yep.
And we just need to keep wrestling. Yep. We just need to keep running, because there's going to be a blessing at the... Now, it may not be a blessing as we define it or as our society defines it, but rest assured there will be a blessing, and we just need to keep wrestling and running.
Amen. Amen. Question number 3. Keep him close, joyful, patient, and faithful. Are you ready to run?
I'm ready to get this 10K started.
Yeah.
It's 10K challenge. I'm ready.
It is that time. This was another short. This is kind of more of a statement than a question, but those are important items to keep him close, to be joyful, to be patient, to be faithful, and all those things take some action.
But it's pretty simple. It's, following God is not complicated. We complicate it.
Yep.
And just keep it simple. I did a post a few days ago. I don't even know if we've talked about this guy on here, but there's a gentleman in our community that I used to pick up on the side of the road quite a bit. He wasn't homeless. He had a home, but he never owned a car, and he would just walk. He lived in one direction from my house, and he would walk to the bank and to the grocery store and back home. And he did this for 60 years. And his name is Mr. Manus, Daniel Manus. And, when I started picking him up, the first time I ever picked him up, and I had seen him before, but I guess God made me notice him this time, was several years ago. And he was sitting, leaned up against a rail on a bridge, just standing there, and it was absolutely pouring down raining. Lightning just blowing sideways, and I go flying by him in my truck, and it's like God said, put it in reverse.
Whoa. And
so I backed up, and I rolled my window down. I said, do you need a ride somewhere? And he said, yeah. And he's probably mid-70s at the time. And Daniel got in the truck, and so I started picking him up pretty often. Anytime I would see him from then on. And if it was pretty outside, Daniel would say, no, I think I'm just going to walk today. And I asked him one time, I said, Daniel, how long does it take you to make this loop? Because from his house to the bank, the grocery store, and back, I think was about 9 miles.
Yeah.
Round trip. And I said, Daniel, how long does it take you to do this? And he said, when I was young, it would take me 3.5, 4 hours. He said, but now it takes me 8 or 9 hours. And, Holly and I talked one time about, can we figure out a way to raise some money and get him a car? But then I was talking to him one day, and I realized a car would have killed him. Not actually.
Yeah.
But that's what kept him alive, because he said something one day. It was when I was asking the question about how long it took him, and he said, I'm just blessed to be able to do all this walking. And I thought, we can all learn something from this guy. The simplicity of how he lived his life. We can all learn something from him. We're so busy. We're so pulled in so many directions. But Daniel loved the Lord, and Daniel just passed away a couple weeks ago. And I know he's sitting up there looking down on us now, but I don't know how we got on him, but he lived his life simple. He was joyful, he was patient, and he was faithful. Mm-hmm. And he just loved to walk. And he was he was an awesome guy.
And he took what many people would look at as a curse, and he realized the blessing of it.
Did you ever meet Mr. Manus?
I never did.
You've heard me talk about him.
Yeah, I've heard.
You may not have met him, but 2 years ago at Run at the Mill, I actually went and picked him up and brought him to the race, and he hung out over at the coffee tent, and he just loved it. I mean, he loved the simple thing. I mean, who else would want you to pick him up and bring him to a half marathon to just sit there and watch?
Yeah.
But he loved it.
Yeah.
He loved the simple things in life.
Yeah.
We can all learn a lot from Daniel.
We sure could.
While you're working hard to keep your body in shape physically, the music you listen to while you run can help keep you in shape spiritually. We've partnered with J Radio to put together a group of running playlists by Dean, Lane, Holly, myself, and others that you hear here on the Run for God podcast. Plus, you can listen to a playlist put together by members of Run Club just like you. Check out the whole station of Run for God playlist at jradio.com and in the J Radio app.
All right, we are back, and we have the Olympic trials for track. They're coming up pretty soon, not too long. I know you're not a huge track fan.
It's like watching paint dry.
But do you have an event that you like to watch?
I guess the mile and the 800. 800
Which
is
they
just
don't have in the Olympics, but
really
the mile.
They don't have the mile in the Olympics. I didn't know that.
1,500 meters.
That's just a weird distance.
Yeah, well, really though.
Of course, it's really not a mile in high school either.
Yeah, which
1600.
I have real problems with. I have a real problem with 1,600 meters, but that's.
But 1,500 is even more weird.
No, at least that's 1.5K. That's the whole idea.
But it's
behind
not 4 laps.
Yeah, well, and that's because
at least the 1,600 is 400 meter laps.
Yeah, I guess. But 1,600 meters. What's 1,600 meters makes no sense. I don't know.
It's 4 laps.
I guess. But you only got to make it 9 meters longer to make it a mile. Let's just make it a mile.
But then you have to put another line on the track, and that would be weird.
That's awesome. Let's put the line. A lot of tracks have that line.
Do they really?
Yes, they do. Most collegiate ones do.
Really?
Yes, and every track should have a mile line. Every single one.
So I like the mile because it was kind of a staple in it was a benchmark for the kids we coached growing up. So I love to watch the mile, but I like the 800 meters because it's just guts.
It is.
It's really not a sprint. It's really not like 100 meters. There is a little bit of strategy, I guess. Maybe not. I don't know.
No, there is.
100 meters, there's no strategy.
Yeah.
The mile, 2 mile, there's lots of strategy. But the 800 meters is kind of in that no man's land where I've never ran an 800 meter all out, I don't think. But it's got to be one of the hardest events, I would think.
And that's why you mentioned that there are a lot of good 800 meter runners are 400 meter runners that try to go a little longer, and some of them are 1,500 meter runners that try to go a little bit shorter. And eventually you find but usually there's a background from somebody going shorter or going longer than normal. And it's very interesting to watch those two different individuals meet in the 800 meters. So, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The 800 meters is a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point where
you see some of the most dramatic, let me put it this way, just in the few track meets that I've been to, which isn't a ton, you see some of the most dramatic blow-ups, walls hit.
Yeah.
And it's because they're trying to go at that 400-meter pace, and it's going to be a miracle if they hold it for 800. And sometimes about 600, it's like a parachute ejects out of the back.
Yeah.
And it's a dramatic slowdown.
Yeah.
But so it's a testament to really, if you finish an 800 meter the way 800 meter is supposed to be run, that's pushing yourself to the limit.
Yeah, I remember when I was at Georgia Tech and we had a guy who was a 400-meter runner, had never run the 800 meters before, and they decided to let him run the 800 meters at the conference meet. And he goes out in the first lap in 48. Like well under.
And everybody on the sideline
pace.
knows what's about to happen.
Yeah. And, it was funny. Now, he still won it because by the time he got to the first lap, he was already 6 seconds ahead of the next guy.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Ignorance could be bliss on the 800.
Yeah. He didn't run it like that the next time.
I bet he didn't.
All right. I've really enjoyed field events more recently because I've never been really a part of field events. But my Dalton State team, we've got a few field events folks, and so I've learned some about the field events, and it's really, those are kind of interesting too. But it's a whole different thing than running. Learning all the things you need to do to get yourself flung over a bar in the pole vault there's a lot going on there. A lot.
Well, and it's also funny because you don't see this in cross country, but it's also funny to go to these track meets, especially high schoolers, which is really my only experience with track, to see the different personalities in the way of thinking, because you've got your sprinters and you've got your distance guys and girls.
Yeah.
And the distance guys and girls are like, you're just sprinting. And the sprinters are like, you're so slow. And it's like you see these two worlds collide, and they're both incredibly awesome in their own respect.
Yeah.
But it's like so many times they don't respect each other. It's like, you're just a sprinter. You're just running for 12 seconds.
Yeah.
That's nothing. Yeah.
I love that thought, yeah. All right, it's time for Dean's Thoughts, and that's a time when I share something that I've written about the intersection between running and faith. You know, our bodies are meant to be in motion. And how about we use a light bulb as an illustration? This one is called Lights Are Made for Burning. There is a light bulb in a fire station in Livermore, California called the Centennial Light. What's so special about a light bulb that it would have a special name, a dedicated web page, and a webcam focused on it 24 hours a day? After all, light bulbs are common, everyday objects that we don't really think about much. Have you named the light bulb in your kitchen, for example? Well, of course not. But then again, the light bulb in your kitchen has not been burning for 120 years. That's right. I said 120 years. The average light bulb lasts 700 to 2,500 hours. This one has lasted well over 1,000,000 hours, having first been put into service in 1901. Even by the lofty standards set by the current LED bulbs, which are rated at 25,000 to 50,000 hours, the longevity of this bulb is incredible. And it doesn't even sound plausible, does it? But it's true. There are several reasons why the light continues to burn. The first is obvious. It was just made better than most light bulbs. Tests on other similar light bulbs show that the filament is 8 times thicker than the average bulb. As with many things from that era, it was just built sturdier. Another reason that the bulb is currently operating is at, Another reason is that the bulb is currently operating at 4 watts. That's about the equivalent of a nightlight. Since there is less current going through the filament, it lasts longer. It is thought that originally it operated at 30 watts, but has dimmed over time. But I want to focus on the last reason the light has lasted so long. They rarely turn it off. It has only been off a handful of times over the years for power outages, a failed power supply one time, and to move it to different buildings. It still hangs from the original fabric cord manufactured in the same era as the light bulb. When an incandescent bulb is turned on, the filament heats up. Obviously, that's why you can't touch a light bulb that has been burning for more than a minute or two without burning yourself. When the light is turned off, it cools. Each time the filament is heated and cooled, it expands and then shrinks. It gets brittle as it develops micro cracks and eventually breaks. That's why bulbs so often quit working just after you turn them on. Our bodies are similar. It's better for us to always be active than to exercise regularly for a month and then take months off, alternating over our lifetimes. Our bodies are meant to be in motion. They're built that way. It's not a lot different from the Centennial Light. When we get fit and then we fall out of fitness, our bodies develop issues that are similar to those micro cracks. When we spend time sitting on the couch, our cholesterol raises along with our weight. Our heart weakens ever so slightly. Our muscles begin to atrophy to a degree. If we keep ourselves going day after day, we don't allow those bad things to creep up on us. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute. We don't have to don't we have to rest in between exercises? Of course, the answer is yes. But look at it this way. Resting is part of the cycle of staying in shape. The electricity to the Centennial Light runs in cycles. The alternating current means exactly what it sounds like. The current runs in one direction, then switches to the other direction. Think of the run and subsequent rest as alternating current. We know that light bulbs are made for burning and that our bodies are meant for motion. But we're also made for worship, literally. Isaiah 43:7 says, "Everyone who is called by my name, who I have created for my glory, I have formed him. Yes, I have made him." It is the reason we exist. The Centennial Light was made to be a light bulb. You wouldn't use it as a toothbrush. Why? Because it was made to be a light bulb. Likewise, we were created in the image of God to worship and adore Him. We weren't made just to exist. It is why 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, "Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." I know from research and experience that we're better off if we keep running regularly. And 1 Corinthians 10:31 reminds us that we should do it in a worshipful way. Make running and worship a consistent part of who you are and what you do. We don't know how much longer the Centennial Light will last, but one thing is sure. It won't be nearly as long as the time we will have once we enter heaven. Forever is a mighty long time.
That's an awesome story, Dean. So, where are those bulbs nowadays? You know, it seems like the longer they advertise they last, the less they actually last. You know, bring back the incandescent bulbs. You know, I know they're more expensive to burn, but man, these LEDs and fluorescent, and I've had so many problems with these.
Yeah. Now, my LED lights are lasting a lot longer than my incandescent bulbs did. My LED bulbs, I put them in probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I think I've replaced one. I've replaced one over that time period. Incandescent bulbs, I had one in one area of my house that I replaced.
But you could buy 10 incandescent bulbs for what, one of those?
Yeah.
Puss.
But you got to think about, here's the other thing. I know that I sound like some green guy or something, but think about the strain on the electrical supply. The difference in the amount of power it takes to power an LED versus an incandescent bulb is huge.
I get all that, but I actually got a little bit clever. I'm going to give you all some advice here. Have you heard this part?
I've heard this before, yeah.
So when I decided I was going to switch everything over to, at first it was fluorescent and then LED now, but when I decided I was going to switch everything over, I went to Lowe's and I was floored at the cost. You know, I have a lot of can lights in my house, so it's the bigger bulbs and they're pretty expensive, and I have a lot of them in my house. So I made the investment and I bought enough for my whole house, and so I made that kind of investment, and it said 7-year warranty on them. And I thought, if I'm spending this much money, I'm saving these boxes. So I put all the bulbs in, and I saved the boxes, and I just put them above my washer and dryer in our laundry room. If you go in there, you'll see all the boxes up there. They don't last 7 years. Some may, but most of them do not. And so what I do now is about once a year, I'll go and I'll take all the burnt bulbs out, and I'll put them back in the box, and I write blown on the box. And when I have a case filled up, I take my case of light bulbs, and I'll go to Lowe's, and I'll say, I need to return these. And I get the funniest looks, because they'll say, is there something wrong with them? I say, they're blown. And they kind of give me that look, and I'm like, they have a 7-year warranty. Here's my receipt where I bought them. I'm that guy. I'm the cheapskate. But it's turned into, I haven't bought lights in years now, because I just go return. I'm probably the only person on earth that returns light bulbs when they're blown. But they're expensive.
So they're really not any more expensive than those incandescent bulbs at this point.
For me, they're not. But the funny thing was, funny story, we took these case of bulbs back one time. And like I said, I write B on them, so I know which ones are new, because I still have some new ones on the shelf, and I know which ones are new and which ones are blown. I write a B on the outside of the box. And so I took this case of bulbs back with B written on them, and I took them back. I explained that they were blown. I showed them my receipt where they're still under warranty. And Lowe's is great about they'll just replace them, because I think they have some kind of deal worked out with their manufacturer. And and they always give me a Lowe's gift card to buy the new ones. And so we had some other things to look for, whatever, and I went over to the aisle where the bulbs were, and I was going to pick up me a new case of bulbs. So I grabbed the first case out. Guess what I see written on all the boxes?
B.
A B. They had taken my blown bulbs and just put them back on the shelf. So I carried them back to the front, and I'm like, these are blown. There's something wrong with them. Anyway.
Good story.
I'm a cheapskate.
It's a good story. Yeah, I've learned too that you got to weigh these things, right? Because I was wearing, please don't go out and buy these shoes just because I say so. I was wearing the Saucony Kinvara running shoe. I got 40 pairs of those. And I changed recently. And I always say, don't change once you find something that works. And they did work. But out of necessity, my shoes were worn out. I went to the local running store. They didn't have the Kinvara in my size. And so they said, well, this Saucony Freedom is basically the same shoe. It just lasts longer. And so I thought, well, I don't have another alternative right now. So, okay, I'll buy that one. So I bought the Saucony Freedom. Well, the pair that I just retired just this past week had well over 700 miles on them. And they still feel pretty good. I've just worn the rubber off the bottom of them. I can't wear them anymore because I've worn into the midsole.
Wow.
And so you can find shoes that you may be able to find shoes out there that last longer. Now, they cost a little bit more, but in the grand scheme of things, sort of like those light bulbs, they don't really, they cost more when I buy them, but I only have to buy them half as many times.
Yeah.
And so they're actually cheaper. So, yeah. I like it. Yeah, this light bulb is often mentioned. You know, when people talk about planned obsolescence, you've heard that phrase where they say that cars could get 100 miles to a gallon, but they purposefully make them where they don't, so that you have to buy gas for them.
That is true. That is true. Is being in the building industry, I see it in appliances and all kind of stuff.
Well,
I'm a firm believer in that.
This light bulb is often cited, and they say, look, here's a light bulb lasted 120 years. Why can't they all last 120 years? Because they don't want them to. That's why.
Sounds like a conspiracy theory to me.
Yeah. Maybe this is just God playing a trick on people, though. You know, maybe he's had this light lasting that long just to needle
just to
us.
mess with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so is it considered a incandescent?
Yeah.
It is
an
okay.
Incandescent bulb.
Incandescent.
Yeah, 120 years old. Yeah, and it's still
funny
bright.
because I'm sitting here looking at a light bulb.
And you can go online right now, and there's a website for the Centennial Light where you can see it burning right now.
I'm gonna have to go check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So I don't know if we're necessarily made for running specifically. As far as a preferred exerciser, I don't know if you like that if you're listening to this, but we are definitely made for movement. That's 100% proof.
Well, I mean, you hear it all the time, and maybe it's just like folklore or legend, but I believe it. You know, just like Mr. Manus, you know, we just talked about. I'm convinced that if we would have figured out how to get the man a car, his life would have ended much earlier.
Yeah.
Because that's what kept him going. You hear about people who retire and who don't have anything to do after retirement. They tend to go downhill quicker. And see, I mean, yeah, I'm a firm believer. We're meant to move. We're meant to be doing.
For sure. The book Born to Run kind of chronicles how we're made to be runners. I think that's a very interesting book if you want to read that one. But 1 Corinthians 10:31 says all things, all the time, 24 hours a day, just like this light bulb.
Sure.
That's the way we're supposed to be. That's what God wants. He wants us to never be turned off.
If you've ever participated in any sport, you've probably met a great coach. Great coaches inspire us to do more than we ever thought possible. You can be the leader that helps others achieve things they never thought possible. You, yes, you have the ability and the opportunity to be that person. All you need is a heart to help people and the ability to follow a plan. The Run for God 5K Challenge will come ready to help you inspire those around you. The step-by-step guide will direct you how to plan, pray, and train people both physically and spiritually. You can help them become more fit in their health and in their walk with Christ. Share your passion. Go to runforgod.com to find out how to inspire others to accomplish big things.
So we're back, and you know, it's funny, we're sitting here talking about a light bulb, how all things, all times, God never wants us to be turned off. And you didn't look when I said, but I'm sitting here staring at a light bulb, and it's the J103 logo, and J103's tagline is shining the light. And so I just think that's cool that we're sitting here talking about this, and we're their studio.
Pretty
awesome.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
It's a coincidence, I'm sure.
Hey, so we recently had a triathlete of all people, break the 5K road record in Britain. How crazy was that?
That's awesome.
Beth Potter, she ran 14:41, which is
and that's fast.
That is very fast. Here's the interesting thing. She finished 40th overall in that race. I don't know if you went back and looked at the results of that race. 40th. There were 39 people who ran faster than 14:41 that day. I mean, they were all men, obviously, but Johnny Brownlee, who's also a triathlete, he was 4th in the race, and he ran 13:52. So,
that is insane. So what kind of race was it? I didn't even look at it. I just saw that she did it. But what kind of race has 50 people under 15 minutes?
It's just a local road race that they have there in Britain. I don't know that much.
That's not just a local road race. There's something more than that.
Yeah, obviously they get the elite folks there somehow. It's just, and obviously it's a really, really fast course, and so that's part of the reason why people like to run that one. And
so how common is it? I'm looking at Jonathan Brownlee's time, 13:52. I don't even know the answer to this. How common is sub 14 in the professional arena? Is that pretty common?
In road races or on the track? Because on the track, it's not that impressive.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, on the track now, to be world class, you got to probably run 13:20.
Wow.
And the world record is 12:40 something now. 12:30 something. 12:37, I think it is. So
is that Cheptegei?
Cheptegei, yeah.
Wow.
So 13:52. It is fast. Don't get me wrong, and it's very rarely done on roads. Mm-hmm. It's you just don't see people breaking 14 minutes on the roads, because most professionals, they don't run very many 5Ks.
So let's get into the debate a little bit. I don't think we really debate this. I think we look at it a little bit different. The concept of triathletes and the cross training, and they don't have as much volume as pure runners. I know of 2 people Lane's age who are state champs, who are triathletes.
State running champs.
State running cross country champs. Yeah. What do you think contributes to that? Because I think there's 2 trains of thought. I think one, we kind of bounce around that their variety of training is actually good. They're not putting in all the miles that pure runners are, and therefore they're more healthy. I think for this age group, I think it's the fact, a lot of it is that they're just training all year long, where most, especially high school runners, well, the elite ones they're training all year long. What do you think is leading to somebody like Beth Potter breaking the world record? And she's not running like the elite runners, I wouldn't think, because she's a triathlete. She's an elite triathlete. Johnny Brownlee, I mean, he's smoking fast. What? You think there's anything to the cross-training, the swimming and the biking going along with it?
Yeah, I think absolutely, because I think when you train, you're actually training several different things. And one of those things is just the ability to keep an intensity level up for a certain period of time. Well, you're getting that training on the bike, and you're getting that training in the pool.
You're training the engine.
Yeah, that's what we always say in triathlon. That's kind of triathlon lingo for.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think there's absolutely a lot of truth to that. Now, I still think, here you had a world record. Again, it's at an odd distance. Mm-hmm. I don't see a triathlete setting the 10K road world record.
Right.
I mean, that could happen. I don't see that happening, because I still think you have to be dedicated to running to be the best runner.
But the fact that they get so close.
Oh, yeah.
And they're running, I don't know. I don't know what distance.
Half the number of miles.
Yeah, on half the miles. So that's, I don't know.
But again, think about it. The reason why you're running, okay, if a professional athlete, let's say they run 100 miles a week, okay, and these people are running 50 or 60 miles a week. Well, that second half of that 100 miles a week is really endurance-related miles.
And you're getting that in the pool and on the bike.
Right, yeah. Right. So
without the risk of the injury.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. So.
And you and I have had this discussion before. I was not a big believer in triathletes being great runners at one time. I still think it's better to only run if you want to be the best runner you can be. But my eyes have sure been opened as to just how impressive these folks can be. And we see it all the time. We see folks who run faster at the end of a triathlon for a 5K than they do in an open 5K.
Nick Holmes.
Yep.
One of Lane's competition.
Yep. And it makes no sense.
I think his
to me.
PR is off the bike. His PR in a 5K is off the bike.
Yeah. And that I can't explain. I just can't explain that.
Yeah, and I just don't know if it's how some people's engines are warmed up. You know, one of your girls years ago, I don't know if she hasn't been on a bike in a while, but Rebecca.
Yeah.
She was always faster off the bike, and we always just attributed it to she probably just didn't warm up in an open running situation but you know, when 10K or 20K on the bike is a great warm up for a run. You've got the engine hot and ready to run after that. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. It was cool to see Beth break that. Yeah.
Well, Gwen Jorgensen is an interesting. Of course, she's had some setbacks, but she's still trying. I guess I assume she's still trying.
She is
to make the Olympic marathon team at some point in time, because she was obviously a gold medal winner in the Olympics in triathlon, and is trying to be a runner.
But she was a world class runner before triathlon.
Well, she wasn't world class.
But
she was very good.
Yeah,
she's very good.
Yeah. That's why she was recruited in the college recruitment program, because she was a great runner and swimmer. She had never been on a bike in her life, but it was always funny to watch Gwen race, especially in her early races. She got better in the water and the bike later on in her career, just before she won the gold medal. But those early races, it was hilarious. It was about like watching you do a triathlon.
Yeah.
She would come out of the water just way back because she absolutely was terrible at swimming early on.
Yeah.
She got off the bike, and it was like, if you didn't have a 5-minute lead on her, you were getting beat.
Yeah.
Because she would absolutely annihilate people in the run, and that was kind of like you.
That was a lot of fun to watch.
It was.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of controversy about this particular Beth Potter record, and I say controversy. I don't know. There weren't any doping people there, so they don't.
You've got your haters.
Well, we don't know whether they're going to certify it or not, because in order to certify, you're supposed to have the anti-doping people there, and they didn't, because probably they didn't expect anybody to set a world record here. So it may not be. They may not sanctioned it properly and all that. But the bottom line is, we know the course is accurate.
But the caliber of people they had there. I mean, we just said there was 50 people run sub 15. Why would you not think that was a possibility with that caliber of field there? Well, makes you scratch your head.
Yeah. Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
I mean, if you're spending that much money to get that caliber of field there, you think you'd
a few thousand
call the
more.
Olympic Committee or whoever the governing body is and say, hey, send us some test kits.
For sure. I didn't realize this until after I looked into all this, that the 5K road record has only been recognized since 2018.
Yeah, you mentioned that the other day.
So that's kind of a brand new thing. In the past, the 5K was considered 5K is the fun run distance, and we don't really look at that professionally. Mm-hmm. And only recently have people tried to get out there and run super fast 5Ks. So yeah, weird, I think. The interesting thing about Beth is that the reason why she became a triathlete is because she was a runner who couldn't find sponsors to sponsor her running.
And now she's set the world record.
And now she's a world record holder.
I'll bet that guy, whatever sponsorship firm she got denied by, is thinking, I messed up.
Yeah, she gets her pick now.
It's kind of like, was it... Help me out with the marathoner, the older guy who dominated
Meb Kopleski.
It's kind of like when Meb left whatever shoe company and went to the Skechers.
Yeah.
Then he won the Boston Marathon, and you're thinking, because they thought he was done.
Right.
He's old news, and then he gets a new shoe brand. He wins the Boston Marathon, and where was he? Was he at Nike or Reebok or?
I don't think it was Nike, but I don't remember.
It was one of the big ones.
Yeah, it was.
You know that board meeting, somebody was getting looked at saying, "What did you do? Yeah. Why did you let him go?"
They just legitimized their competition, is what they did.
Skechers, yeah.
Skechers.
I mean, before Meb, it was like nobody runs in Skechers.
Yep. That's a great story.
Yeah, Meb and Go Run now are just synonymous.
I love that story. Trivia question for this week. The 1904 Olympic Marathon was held in St. Louis. It was the first in the United States. The marathon was crazy for several reasons. Just tell me just one of those reasons, because there's a bunch. When you start digging into this one, you're going to go, really? Because this is an interesting story. Google the 1904 Olympic Marathon and learn about it. It's fascinating.
Now, you got to send the answer. Number one, you got to be a Run Club member. And you got to send the answer to dean@runforgod.com. Not Messenger, not customer service. We've had more than one person do that. It needs to be sent to dean@runforgod.com along with your T-shirt size. And if you're the first one to give a right answer, then we'll send you a Run Club box.
And I'll tell you this, if you haven't gone out, I get a lot of messages from folks saying, these are so interesting to go back and to research these things. If you haven't researched any until now, you want to read about this one.
Yeah.
This one's fun. All right, so here's why running is so awesome. You can chase yourself. You know, we're always trying to do better than our last time out, right? It's all about being the best version we can be of ourselves. I think Dean Carnazza said that when we interviewed him. We want to be the best version of ourselves. And running allows you to do that. There's a lot of sports that don't really allow you to do that because it relies on a lot of other people, or there's lots of different reasons. We don't have to be better than somebody else in running to be satisfied with running. Just a PR. Or I just turned 55. Just having my fastest time as a over 55-year-old is satisfying. So it's like you reset every 5 years. And I guess it's a little bit like golf, in that you can try to, because golf's the same way. As you get older, you don't play golf as well, but you can be excited about doing well for today and beating yourself from yesterday. And the difference is that running really keeps you fit at the same time, which is an awesome byproduct.
I'm thinking out loud here, and you may say, no, you're wrong. Running as an adult, how many other sports is the amateur field as an adults bigger than the pro field? I mean, as adults in the sport of football, if you're not in the NFL, there's really no place for you.
It's true.
If you're not in the NBA, there's really no place for you other than a pickup game here and there.
Yeah.
But the amateur field in the sport of running is much bigger than the professional field. So that should tell us something. There's room for you here, no matter your speed.
That is true. That is true. Our motivational thought of the week. This comes from Nikita Gill, who's a poet. And it is, the people who consider you weak have not yet noticed the wolf hiding behind your eyes, nor the flames inside your souls. Let them think you are weak and do what wolves and fire do best. Surprise them when they least expect it.
I like that.
Isn't that good?
That's awesome.
We all like it when we surprise those people who don't believe in us, right? We've all had that situation where we're going to try something, people don't believe we can do it, and then we do it. We don't want to be cocky about stuff, but we really want to stick our chest out and go, yeah. And there's a certain extra element of satisfaction.
Yeah, it's kind of like I used to tell my boys all the time, be the kid who doesn't say much so that when he does, people listen. And that's kind of like that. I mean, it's make a statement when you make a statement.
Yeah.
Don't. I like this.
I've got a girl who runs on my team who she was told by other people that she would never be able to be a collegiate runner. And she has worked her tail. She's a freshman. For this last year, she's worked her tail off to try to be the best she can be. And she has come a long way. I joke with her all the time, and I tell her, man, I remember that first day at practice. I was wondering if I should have let you on the team because it was not good. And now she's a key part of our team.
That's awesome.
And she's worked so hard, and so now she's going to be able to go back to that person or those people who said you'll never be a collegiate runner and go, well, not only am I a collegiate runner, but I'm an important part of a collegiate team. I'm not just an also-ran.
That's awesome.
I was the number 6 runner on the number 18 team in the country. I mean, she can go in and with some real teeth and say, I did this, and she deserves it because she worked hard.
Yeah. So I've got a confession to make. So we record these podcasts like 2 weeks ahead of when they're aired. So, you know, your memory is worse than mine, but mine's getting worse in our age. And so we this past Friday night, we ate dinner with some Run Club members who were coming to town, and some of them came in early, and we had a dinner. And Patrick Hawkins, I had noticed earlier in the week that he went on Facebook on the Run Club group, and he said, "I did it." And I saw that, and I was like, what is he talking about? And then I saw somebody else said, "I did it." And I'm like, what in the world are they talking about? Well, 2 weeks before, you and I were on a podcast, and right at the end, I don't know where it came from, but I said, share this podcast with 5 people who need to hear it. Don't share it on social media. Text it to them. Send a personal text to 5 people who you think may need or want to hear this podcast, and then come on the Run Club and just say, "I did it," and nothing else. Well, these people were doing exactly what we asked to do, but I had forgot what I asked. And even somebody said, they said, you threw out a challenge on social media to do that, but they couldn't remember exactly what the challenge was. I had to go back and listen to our podcast to find out what I said. So excuse that my mind is slipping in my older age, but let's throw that challenge out again, and I'll remember it this time. I'll give you a thumbs up on social media letting you know that I remember it this time. So share this podcast with 5 people, not on social media. If you want to do that too, that's great. 5 people, send them a text and just say, "Hey, thought about you when I heard this today. Here's a podcast." And then go on the Run Club and say, "I did it, and I will remember this time." Patrick, I will remember this time.
That's a great story. I love that. And that's, listen, this aging thing, it's not for sissies. I'm just telling you.
It is not.
So, yeah, make sure you're sharing with others. All right, everybody, you're doing a great job. Keep up the training. Keep focusing, and you're going to get to that 10K finish line before you know it, and then we're going to be moving on from there. So keep glorifying God in your running and everything that you do, and may God bless every step of every run. Go out there and shine your light.
Good job, Dean.
For more information about the Run for God ministry, go to runforgod.com. If you have questions about your salvation, click on the Peace with God tab. There's nothing more important. Thanks for joining us today.